Again, we're here today at Oakland Nursery with some East Linden Summer Experience students. And here I have with me is
Zadaya
and
Sayana.
And they're gonna help me do something called subotising. Now, I've got a really pretty plant to show you, and I want you to look at the plant and tell me how many blooms you see. You ready?
Yeah.
This one.
3.
3? How did you know it was 3?
Because I was looking with my eyes.
Yes. You didn't have to count, you just knew, right? Now we are still gonna count so we can confirm that there are 3. Let's count together. That's 1, 2, 3. So that's 3. Great job. Give me a high five. Yes. So if you're thinking about planting your own garden, remember there are a few simple math concepts that are wrapped up in gardening, like measurement, time, the size and shape of your garden, the square footage that garden is going to cover. Perhaps a visit to Oakland Nursery will inspire you to want to create your own garden. As always, thank you for joining us today with Math Everywhere. And as always, math is everywhere.
I can say it's truly magical. They love the taste of fresh produce just from the plant. Some of my students don't even know where some food comes from the grocery stores, so they learn so many things when they garden.
So they really want to be a part of it. Some of them at first, they're really excited about it, but then there are others that say, I really want to know a little bit more about this, so it's more than just looking and glancing at it. It's like, how can I be a part of this? Because I've seen it go from being just a seed, and now it's growing, and I want to be a part of that process.
So they really take care of everything and do it all and know how to do it all, and they have a lot of pride in that, in showing whoever comes into our classroom what they do and how they do it and what they've grown.
I think it's really cool that they're learning how food is actually grown now, because so many places are using all hydroponics, and so it's really opening their mind to see different ways that food can grow.
Learning how to grow is really important, and when you see it in person, it's a lot different than just reading about it or seeing pictures of it. And taking the fresh produce that you grow and then being able to cook it and taste it in your classroom, then potentially going home and requesting it at home, I think is pretty powerful of an impact.
It tastes different because it's more fresh at the moment, and also when you freshly pick it and just go wash it real quick and then eat it, it's crunchy and delicious, but when you buy it from the store, it doesn't taste normal.
This is the best salad I ever tasted. This salad is so much yummier than my mom's own salad.
Having like a fresh lettuce that you just picked is really, it has its unique taste.
It was my first time ever trying bok choy and kale. They looked pretty weird at first. When my friends told me to try it, I just took a bite and it was super good.
Oh, it's so cute because they really have a new taste when they try like tomatoes from the grocery store. I mean, they don't taste the same as fresh from the vine, and just their brains are exploding. Like normally they want to ask for ranch and they just pop it without it, so that's amazing.
In the spring of 2024, Fort Hays was unexpectedly without a choir teacher. The principal, Dr. Milton Ruffin, took it upon himself to teach the class. Their final project was to be a recording of a song written by Dr. Ruffin. We now present to you the result of their hard work.
All right, let's do Celebrate. Hey, you ready? Go. Hey, so we get the drop the jaw instead of ya. Hey, ya. Hey, ya. 1, 2, ready, and. Hey, ya.
Find a better tomorrow, and hope we can find a common place, and hope we find love for each other. That's why we clap our hands and we lift our voices. And hope I can find a better you, and hope you can find a better.
I was pretty nervous. I'm not even gonna lie. I was nervous, but then again, I was very excited. I was like, this is my first time going to record. I hope I don't mess this up for everybody. You know, all these thoughts in my head. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I did it. I have no regrets of doing it. I wish I could do it again. Sadly, this is my last year. But yeah.
There's a brighter day coming, and it's getting closer every day. There is a brighter day coming where we all participate and we'll overcome that day.
He treated us like he treats his college students.
Yeah, which was cool, but at the same time, it's a little rough to meet those expectations.
It was very challenging for us to get there.
So we clap our hands and we lift our voices. And hope I can find a better you. And hope you can find a better me. And hope.
I listened to just the stems of the song every day for about 2 weeks before the recording session, and then when I came in, you know, we did about 2 takes of it. I think it was a combination of like the first and second take, and looked at the digital audio workstation on his computer, and try to make the drums sound as keen to the song as possible.
Now we stand at last. There's a brighter day coming, and it's getting closer every day. There is a brighter day coming where we all participate and we'll overcome that day. We celebrate the mountains we come over and press towards a perfect.
And so it's tricky, especially for people who are not used to recording, young students, people who it's their first time recording. They get nervous. There's really no audience to give you that energy feedback and that appreciation for what you're doing. It's just an empty room with me.
And we
ACS Cinema Club, welcome. My name is Leia Gersing, and I'm here with, of course, Sarah Durr. And it's just us today, no special guests, because we're getting into this movie. We're talking about Dune Part 2 today.
Presentations, and then we will adjourn the meeting. I think I really view this meeting as our committee receiving a lot of information. I think at the next meeting we'll have a few votes related to some of this information we'll be receiving. So we're also kind of going up against the first day of school tomorrow, so we're all very excited about that. We got, I personally have 3 kids starting school tomorrow. I know a lot of the folks in this room will be up very early and at schools throughout the district or sending their kids off to school, so we will try to be as efficient as possible tonight as well. So thank you, everyone. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve and adopt the agenda for this evening's meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion regarding the agenda? No. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Katzmar?
Yes?
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
The agenda for the May 2026 Equitable and Transparent Resource Management Committee meeting is approved. I'm sorry, the August 19th, 2026 agenda is approved. Now we're going to approve the minutes from the May 20th, 2026 Equitable and Transparent Resource Management Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the May 20th meeting?
Motion.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? No. Please call the roll.
Chair Katzmar?
Yes?
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
So the minutes from the May 20th, 2026 committee meeting are approved. And at this time, we will now open the floor for public comment, and we welcome Amanda King from Safe Green Schools to the committee. Thank you for being here.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me here today. Good to see everybody here. It's been great working with multiple folks from this committee and the board over the last year or so since the Safe Green Schools policy was adopted last year. And just wanted to take this time to share out some of the learnings that we've had with different folks on this committee in the district. And the Safe Green Schools, parents, teachers, and students and community members that are part of our sort of collective working with the district to find some more resources for our schools that we love so much here. So some of those learnings I wanted to share out are about some of the green investments we can make. And so I'm flipping to my second page here, or the second slide. Why green investment matters right now. So of course, with the new board policy, that does direct facilities to integrate energy efficient equipment, solar, renewable energy, and just generally green infrastructure across the district where it makes financial sense to do so. And we know that with the upcoming ed specs, that the goals for that program or that initiative are really aligned with Safe Green Schools, finding that comfort, air quality, daylighting goals for all of our learning spaces. So just encouraging the board and the district to think about how capital dollars are being spent and making sure that we're getting those return on investments as we're sort of trying to pair these different initiatives together. So we know that HVAC usage is a huge part of the energy costs for the district. So integrating, some of these financing tools that we know about, that we've been learning about to save the district some significant funds. Just one solar project or HVAC project could save a high school $75,000 a year on energy expenses. So we know that's something really worth taking a good look at. And we know that, HVAC solar systems, they can last 20 to 30 years. So we want to make sure that the district looks at, a great quality investment when they're making these decisions. So some of the financing that we've been learning about that's still available, we still have IRA elective pay, also called direct pay. So that is still eligible to be used on solar projects, geothermal projects, and battery storage projects. It's a base credit of 30%, and then there's some various adders. So that is still available. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act or whatever did reduce and phase out some of these things, but those are still available as of now. The states also initiated or rolled out their energy loan fund for low cost, very low interest state loans up to 2%. Through House Bill 15 for energy efficient improvements for schools. And a lot of the things that are in ed specs can be included in that as well. We've also, a lot of folks from the team in this room have spoken with the Columbus Green Bank and the Columbus and Franklin County Finance Authority, and they have great cost loans that are specifically designed for schools, governments, things like that. So, this is not, commercial loans that are designed for businesses, but things that are really tailored to the needs of schools. And in addition to all that, the City of Columbus from time to time has sustainability resources and capital dollars that can be tied to, especially if they're tied to the city's clean energy goals. There's funding available there too. So on the next couple of slides, I have a few more details. And, just because I'm trying to get home and pack a couple of backpacks tonight, I won't get into all the deep details here, but just something for you to have at your fingertips here about more about, the terms of these different programs and some of their standards that we hope the district will take a good look at. So I'm on page 7 now, or slide 7. We recommend a financing structure, just thinking about like big picture, bundling a number of projects together with some of these financing sources so that the board is able to, make one or two larger approvals rather than, very piecemeal looking at these projects. I think especially these loan funds can be a good way for the district to plan some of their, safe green schools, ed specs, facilities master plan goals, kind of bundling those together and thinking strategically about how those things get funded and how we can sort of pair and stack these resources together. And with the district owning things like solar and these various assets, there's a higher chance for payback and capturing those savings full on versus other alternatives that are available. Like third-party power purchase agreements where the district doesn't make any, doesn't have any upfront cost, but maybe just only, sees about 5 or 10% of the savings when they go into those agreements. So different, a couple of different approaches, but just encouraging the district to think about how we can, bundle and scale and think strategically about these projects and bring some of these other resources. So just a few more details about how some of these projects can be bundled together. When we're looking at doing a new roof, can we look at it putting solar on that? Or if solar is not feasible at the moment, can we make sure that it's solar ready so that when some of these other resources come down the line in the next few years, we're ready to go, the district's ready to go to implement those. So yeah, it's just slide 9, just looking at ways that we can, the Finance Authority and OFCC are really, really excited to work with the district and figure out financing packages that would work and how we can sort of pool a few, buildings together, multiple projects together. We've looked at a few examples where the district could put together like a portfolio of 20 to 30 priority buildings and deliver $2 to $5 million in annual electricity cost savings and up to 20 megawatts of new clean energy generation capacity. So that goes a really long way towards our decarbonization goals, reaching our clean energy goals by 2035 with this sort of bigger picture approach. So that's my briefing on the financing tools that are out there and available. Something else that our group is working on with I think my second to last slide here, we are working with some technical experts at no cost to the district to develop a very simple, consistent framework grounded in the ed specs and grounded in the Safe Green Schools policy to evaluate how the district can evaluate tiers of investment for any capital project. So whether it's a new school being built, or whether it's a major renovation that needs to happen, or whether it's one boiler or one roof that could be solar ready or could have solar on it, we're helping to develop a technical guide to evaluate those based on what's pretty common in the construction industry, a good, better, best analysis. So good means it meets the basic standards, it gets us through, it's good enough, it's more efficient than the item that we're replacing. Better, would be something that has a stronger long-term value, that maybe we spend a little bit more up front, but we deliver that savings back to the district within a 5 to 10 year payback period. Best would be top of the line. This is really future-proof, future-ready, high performance. And we think about tapping into some of those grants and other sorts of financing that could come in and make that project a reality. So more to come with that. We're working with some technical experts to put that together and share with the district and share with this committee. But that is just a preview of what we'll be working on the next few months of this school year. Were there any questions on this? I know I just tried to fly right through it, but hope that you'll take a good look at some of those tools that are available.
No, that was great. Thank you. I'll just throw out one thing. I think one thing I've noticed from talking with your group and with our facilities team is that a lot of times our facilities team, rightfully so, is looking at these projects through the lens of what is kind of the best financial option for the district, as they should be with everything. So this isn't a comment against anyone, but it feels like they don't have the ability to also consider the grants and financing options that may be available with these. And I guess I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of combine that knowledge with the assessments that Mr. Rowe and Alex and their teams are doing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong with this and if you're already looking at that. But I guess as talking to Safe Green Schools over the last few months, I'm wondering if we should be considering maybe some kind of ad hoc working group that is kind of looking at these things hand in hand. Do you know of any? I guess to Alex or Jeff, am I wrong about that, or do you feel like that's something we could be doing? And to Amanda, is there any examples of other districts or organizations that you can think of that are combining their financial team with their with a third-party organization, with their facilities team, and considering these grants and financial options that are out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of it, when we went to the Green Schools Conference, I went a couple of years ago, and I think you went this last year, a lot of districts shared from various sizes, large urban districts to small, rural, very low staff districts, had some kind of like energy manager or sustainability coordinator that could work with facilities, work with treasurer, work kind of across the silos, right? To sort of coordinate those projects. So facilities, raises up capital needs, and sustainability coordinator applies for grants and, can be, in charge of shepherding those through and kind of looking like bigger picture, pairing things together. I know that with Columbus City Schools, my kids go here, we're trying to find more resources and do more projects with less and less all the time. So we definitely appreciate that constraint there, and how much extra work, and Jeff and his team have taken on extra work to get us where we are today. And I think Jeff has some great announcements to make at some point here about some of some projects they've been awarded, some funds they've been awarded on. So we know folks are stretched, but we do hope that there could be some coordination at that level that make that investment, to have someone sort of overseeing and pulling these together. What we saw at the Green Schools Conference and what the Center for Green Schools studied was that for every staff member that they had, some districts have, like a 10, 12 person sustainability staff, but for every full-time person they had $1 million in savings, in energy savings annually. So I think it is an investment worth making. But short of that, just some working group or somebody tasked with sort of like, bringing everybody together and being able to fill out the grants and, keep an eye and make sure that the assets are delivered so that the tax credit check can come in and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. I know one of the tough things, which is a good thing, and shows the hard work that our facilities team has done, is we've negotiated very low kilowatt hour rates, and so when we try to pencil these projects, it's a little tougher to make them work. And I know we won't always have those rates, I'm sure, but that's just another layer in all this. Treasurer, do you have any thoughts on any of this and how we work across the silos? It's okay if no. I know we're just kind of talking here.
I don't know if this thing's going to work, but I'll try without it then. I think she raises an excellent point. In my experience talking with districts across the country, large and small, the sustainability coordinator really is key in bridging that gap. As I've kind of immersed myself in this and my experience with it, that is going to help us really unlock that value, because they can speak that language, they're going to bridge the finance piece, they're going to be able to navigate the tax credits, work with the facilities team, et cetera. So I think there's something there. I think it's always good to have a point person on projects, because we're spread pretty thin in the district now. So it's really a matter of, okay, how do we prioritize, juggle, and then who hits that go button, if you will. But all the districts I've spoken with, that sustainability coordinator is an interesting piece to look at.
Okay. Great.
I just want to say, from a community aspect, there's a lot of thoughts going through my head, but one is, just from a finance perspective, it seems like a no-brainer if people are willing to offer us low finance loans, right, on things that will last longer, reduce our long-term expenses and maintenance. Like, it just seems like a no-brainer to do it, to be really honest with you. Also, I will point out, I think there's some analysis that we've done that we probably should share, where I think probably a significant amount of our backlog, our maintenance backlog, could actually fall under this if we undertook a serious effort to basically go look through every single school and then get the eligibility to be able to reuse all of these financing mechanisms to offset a significant portion of our backlog, so that we can focus that money on other things, new construction, green buses, like whatever it is, right? So I do just want to point out, like, as a community member, it seems like a no-brainer to like go all in.
Yeah, I can tell you we've done a lot of work. I know Jeff and I have spent some time together, Alex and Bob, Mr. Woods as well. I think, to Board Member Katzenmayer's point, some of the challenges we've had on some of these initial projects that have at least crossed my desk is It's that ROI. And I think we have to really forward vision on that, because to his point, these contracts will come back up for renewal, and at some point, those nice rates we're seeing today aren't going to last forever. But when we try to pencil these out in the short run, I can't speak to every project because I've only seen a couple of them, but they didn't work at the time. But I am intrigued by, to your point, maybe some of the things that we've got in the hopper. I know our facilities team, we've been really diligent on this. I know they're penciling things out as we navigate new construction, permanent improvement investments, et cetera. But yeah, I think we need to be mindful of that and look to the future.
Yeah, I mean, even if this is purely from a financial perspective of being able to spread out our current incoming, PI levy, right, so that we can spread it even wider. To me, that's actually a huge win for the district, right, because we can take that same amount of money and spread it much further, and it also happens to have some really awesome benefits on the side. So.
Agree.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Treasurer Cook, is part of that maybe because we're trying to put new technology into old buildings, and so it just doesn't, the puzzle pieces don't fit together sometimes? Or because one concern I do have is, excuse me, is about making, long-term investments in buildings that should not be open long-term. Sure. And so has that been an impact in just how the finances of these projects are working out?
I think that's some of it. I would be remiss. I don't want to put on a hat that I don't normally wear with the technological piece, but I do think we take that into consideration. It has been a part of the discussions we've had when we look to investments. Okay, what's the future planning with this individual facility, for example? As we buy things at home and in the classrooms, et cetera, technology doesn't always fit, and we don't want to put a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. But I do know that Mr. Rowe and Mr. Trevino and his team, they examine all those, and that certainly does play a part.
Thank you. And then I think, Chair, you had talked about, grants. So one consistent feedback I get from our teachers is that they wish they had more support for applying for grants. They wish, there was kind of someone in the district to help facilitate that process a little bit more. And I think part of it is there isn't, a culture in the district where we really prioritize grants as controllable revenue we can influence. And, you see that in other parts of our district as well. But that's, we can't always control, how much tax dollars we're getting, right? We have to put something on the ballot to do that. But grants are something that are a lot more controllable relative to our other revenue streams. And there just hasn't been that kind of whole organization approach to grants.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, would you like to come up and
I don't want to steal your thunder, but mention your hard work on
hear whatever you
grants. You've had some success as of late.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to come to the podium here. Just a couple of things I wanted to just mention. When we talk about money in terms of utility savings, just our buildings are not that bad compared to national average buildings. There's not that much, say, blood you can squeeze from this turnip. Mm-hmm. We have some buildings that could use some help for sure, but it's not so much on the capital side, it's on people doing the hard work of actually running the computer systems that run the buildings. We're really thin on labor, and that's costing us a lot of money. If I was going to say we're going to put some money somewhere. Grants, there are some grants out there. The world's not rich in grants for capital projects. That said, just this year, I received 4 grants for 4 separate ASHRAE Level 2 energy audits at FMP sites that are our worst performing FMP sites to try to figure out why these buildings are running so poorly and if there's low-hanging fruit that we can do in these buildings. Furthermore, just a couple days ago, it became available to be public that we received $300,000 to do some energy efficient lighting in a number of FMP buildings that still have fluorescent lighting. Legacy buildings have long since been switched to LED lighting. We didn't switch the FMP buildings to LED earlier, in large part because we wanted to keep low-hanging fruit available while rates were low in case of a fiscal emergency, in case we needed to do a House Bill 264 energy services as a contract project. We have passed that levy. There is money now in the FMP fund to upgrade those buildings to LED lighting if that's the right thing to do at this time. Clearly, with grant funding, it makes sense. But it does make sense to have some money available for a rainy day as you package projects together. Also, the deferred maintenance in the HVAC world, which is the majority of our energy spend, isn't really there like it used to be. Operation Fix-It and ESSER funds have replaced all of the legacy systems. And so most of these buildings do not have major deferred investments in the HVAC world. There's some controls work for sure that can be done, and there's absolutely conservation that can be done. So efficiency, remember, is getting you as cheaply as you can to the set points that you want. Conservation will save you money, but at the cost of happiness, of maybe productivity, pissing off employees. There's lots of conservation that can be done. So I'll leave that there. Also, in another grant, the City of Columbus has offered roughly $100,000 to install some new technology as a demonstration project, likely at Starling, likely a battery, that will help with peak load shaving, so we can trim our peak load parts of our utility bills for free with a grant from the City of Columbus. So there are some grants out there, and we're successful at getting these grants. There's not a lot of huge grants out there available for installing things like solar on a building. There are grants in the $20,000 range quite often available, but they're a drop in a bucket compared to a commercial-sized solar system. Solar in general is a great idea in a field when it's on a roof. This is a hill I will try to die on. The panels will be in the way when the roof leaks, and you will lose all of your money savings moving the panels to fix your roof leaks and re-roof the roof, and when it's time to re-roof it. Unless utility inflation significantly exceeds maintenance inflation. Speaking of inflation, if you look at any long-term trends, general inflation has always been cheaper over periods of time than utility inflation, significantly. People say that utility bills go up. They do, but not as fast as everything else in the long term. We had a recent jump. We had a recent jump in 2008 as well, but then utility rates were flat for like 15 years. That could happen again. It's probably likely to happen again based on historical trends. I just wanted to share some thoughts. Any questions?
Yeah, no, thank you for those thoughts. I think it, it's all, a large puzzle that we're kind of trying to put together the pieces here. We passed that, the board passed that policy last year, the Safe Green Schools policy that, tries to get us to, the goal is, 100% renewable energy. When we do a lot of the items you just talked about, the efficiency items, we are reducing the amount of kilowatt hours that we need, but we're not, which is actually, could be viewed as even better than a renewable energy, because you're not producing these things. You're actually just reducing what you need. But in our, when we're scoring it, it's not going to look the same. I mean, do you have any suggestions for how we should be tracking that and communicating that so we can talk about these wins that we're getting? That may not be putting solar panels on a roof, but we are reducing the amount of electricity that we're using, which is the goal at the end of the day.
You're right. We probably don't advertise particularly well our wins. One significant win we have is we use less electric these days than we did before we had air conditioning in the 50 or so schools that air conditioning was added to. We also use significantly less natural gas than we used to. It's a big number. That we're down more than 10% on electric from before Operation Fix-It, and down, I think, 25% on natural gas.
separate question. Do we negotiate? I know I guess yes or no. Some of our buildings are AEP, some of them are City of Columbus, correct?
Yes.
Are we negotiating all of those with each entity at once, or is this a school-by-school basis? How does that?
Well, City of Columbus doesn't allow any kind of negotiation.
Okay.
You get what you get.
Get what you get, don't throw a fit. That's
All right.
what I say. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That's what I tell my kids.
Yeah. I am a Girl Scout dad. I'm very familiar with that.
Yes, okay.
AEP Ohio and Columbia Gas of Ohio, we have the ability to shop for commodity electric and natural gas, just like you can at your house.
Okay.
We have been members of a group of about 200 or 300 other school districts in Ohio for quite some time, where together a group of leaders, and Columbus City Schools is one of the 7 voting members, make decisions on buying those commodities together. And it's a balance of trying to have a stable budget and chase the lowest price. And I think we've been successful for a long time with that relationship. We probably could do better if we broke off from that group and tried for lowest price, but we might miss. And it's just a risk that we haven't made.
Great, thank you. I'm very happy to see what, in my view at least, it seems like the Safe Green Schools folks and just the idea of energy efficiency and renewable energy in general over the past few years has gone from kind of this fight against the district to a really healthy working relationship. And I really appreciate everything that you are doing and that Safe Green Schools is doing and that the department's doing.
Absolutely. I can say with absolute confidence that we would not have that $300,000 grant without Safe Green Schools' help.
Great.
So they did get us that.
Yeah, but it's also our district being open to that and the work of your team kind of participating in that as well. So I feel like we've come a long way and we're all at least aligned on this, trying to figure it out together.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question, but it's actually for our friend from Safe Green Schools. If you wouldn't
Jeff.
mind, sorry. On your 4th slide where we talk about the elective pay, those payments that we can file for, and I do notice here that, there is a time constraint on some of that.
On the solar.
Can you explain a little bit more about what that works, what you all, as advocates for this policy that the board has passed? I guess, to put a little personal insight onto it, it looks like we do have the time constraint with this option. So I want to know more about that, I guess, and just as a way of making sure that, with that in mind, we are getting some of these things done to uphold the policy that's been passed and provide some of this for the buildings.
That's a really good question, and something I'd love to talk about. Yeah, so my day job, I do solar for affordable housing projects and community solar in states that have community solar. So I'm deep in the ITC, in the tax credit, the solar tax credit world in particular. So with the IRA, when it was passed in 2022, these tax credits were all supposed to go and be in their full amounts through 2032. When the current administration came in and changed things in 2024, the geothermal and the battery storage credits will still go through 2032, but solar was cut, so that will sunset. Any projects that are not placed in service by the end of 2027 won't qualify for those credits. So we do have some solar analyses that, I know that the district got, and we're pushing for some more so that we can capture those for solar projects that do make sense. Then there's also when things might change, in the next couple of years. At the federal level, we do, in the solar industry, expect these to come back. So sort of getting a little practice, being ready, knowing what your solar ready roofs will be, knowing what, we know that in the next 5 to 10 years, these roofs will be replaced. That would be a great time to, do solar, maybe get our feet wet, do a couple of solar projects now while we still have these, and then really be ready, sort of have that asset management muscle ready when these incentives do come back in full. But, the district's already doing geothermal. We just did an event out there a few weeks ago, looking at, other districts coming in and looking to see CS as an example of that they've already been, doing well on a lot of things. So that is still available. And the battery storage as well, as Jeff was just talking about. They got a grant for that. There will be tax credits available for that. Battery storage is pretty cool, pretty good way of saving energy, as, it could be a backup generator, or it could just be used to save, so you're not paying like costs at the peak usage time. You would store it in the battery and use it off the battery during that time. So just a great way to reduce the kilowatt hours and things like that. Just, all these puzzle pieces kind of coming together to meet our goals. So those are good questions.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. I was at that event, and it was really cool to see the city of Cleveland, Cincinnati Public Schools, Akron, all of these folks were coming in to see what Columbus City Schools was doing with their geothermal. So that was awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Board Member Simmons?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I think it's also important we consider, solar on other parts of our property too, not just roofs or on top of, carports. I know we're working on a project to do that, but, we do have a lot of parcels, and also, we have parcels where there may be extra space, particularly if we were to build a new building and maybe we built up a little bit and there's room off on the side to do some solar. And I know there's restrictions with ORC and what we can do with the land and whatnot, but, just maybe as a, just suggestion to think outside the box a little bit. And if we've already considered that, maybe there's different spaces to do it.
Great. Agreed.
I had one more question really quick.
Go ahead.
This might be for both of you, but way back in like February, I did a open records request for the full maintenance backlog, and I got like 12,000 line items. And so then what I did is I ran that through Claude. And I had Claude basically look at every single one and give it a category. And then I said, now go find grants for me, right? Like, let's find ways to offset this cost. So, you mentioned roofs and having to repair roofs and walls. And I'm curious, have we looked at what grant money is out there for, like you mentioned the HVAC controls. I wonder if there's still like roofs, windows, walls that need to be fixed that we can get grant money for. Like, I think there's more, like solar panels are great. I'm all for it personally. We can debate that. But I think there's more than that, and I'm curious if we've looked wider than just solar panels to see if there's other grants or money out there that can help us offset some of the other costs that we have. And Claude might be wrong too, so that's okay, but it's worth exploring, right?
That is an interesting method you did to try to find grants, and I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of a grant for improvements of that sort. It's something that we might be missing without somebody looking for us. And maybe we have somebody looking for us in our grants department that we do have, but that would be fantastic.
Okay.
That'd be news to me.
Well, I'll send what I found, and hopefully we can find something there, so.
Great. Cool. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you both. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here and giving us this update, and appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
So next, we're going to move into committee operations. We have 3 presentations coming from the district that are essentially updates that we will, I think, use over the next few months to consider some paths forward. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Woods to guide us through these.
Thank you. Is this working?
Yeah.
You all hear me?
You're good.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chair Katzenmeyer, for allowing us to come and have these conversations. As you mentioned, it is more of a kind of informative information sharing session, but we think it's important that we continue these conversations specifically related to our facilities portfolio. So if we look at the slide presentation, we're going to talk about the facilities portfolio in two presentations. I'm going to lead. We're going to introduce a strategy map and looking for any feedback that the committee members may have on that strategy map. And then Dr. Brown is going to follow that conversation, looking at some of the realignment work that we've been doing and a potential path forward on that piece. So if we can go to the next slide. I don't have the clicker here in front of me. Next slide, on slide 2. These are the topics that will be discussed today. All strategic planning starts with a scan of the internal environment. Thank you, Dr. Brown. See if I can multitask. Yep. Okay, we're good. For divisions and departments similar to ours, it is imperative that we align with the district's overall mission, vision, and strategic priorities. As we all know, due to national, state, and local changes to include the funding model, new legislation, et cetera, we need to shift our narrative. That's something that I'm hearing quite a bit out in the community about our narrative and how can we shift our narrative. And then we will introduce our draft strategy map, and we will highlight a timeline for recommendations to the board based on a balanced portfolio. Superintendent Dr. Angela Chapman has tasked us to work with the ETRM committee to clearly articulate a strategy for the future of CCS facilities with bold goals. We want to look at how can we build new neighborhood schools where needed to match population growth and movement. We maintain schools that can still offer quality programs. How can we reuse consolidated or closed buildings that simply are no longer needed or effective? One of the first things that we did is we wanted to take a look at the external environment. Using viable resources, we scanned the environment to identify strengths, opportunities, et cetera, relevant to CCS as the largest school district in the region. And when I say region, the region is loosely defined as Franklin County and its immediate suburban neighbors. By MORPC's account, Central Ohio is the fastest growing region in the Midwest, projected to exceed 3 million residents by 2050, and the economic engine behind that growth is highlighted on this slide. I will not read every bullet, but I do want to take this opportunity to thank MORPC. I want to thank our own ETRM committee, Mr. Martin Davis, and staff from Dr. Brown's division for some of the research, recommendations, and analysis that supports our strategic map or our strategic intent. Our Columbus region is on the rise and growing. CCS must fulfill its mission to prepare students for leadership, service, and success as a citizen in the global community, but it is also poised to help build and grow our local economy and neighborhoods. As we're experiencing this unprecedented growth, opportunities exist for CCS to help address inequities and poverty that still exist in some of our underserved neighborhoods. Highlighted on this slide are research and analysis conducted across neighborhoods, specifically where CCS has elementary schools, point to these most common needs for those neighborhoods. It is important to note, however, that the national parental choice data, based on national parental choice data, families choose schools first on teacher and academic quality. We cannot lose sight of the importance of our core mission of teaching and learning. That means that CCS has levers that we can use. One, we have to continue to focus and promote strong academics. And two, the neighborhood school itself is a lever that we can pull, and it often serves as the anchor for many of these neighborhoods. A school that is academically strong sits in the center of a neighborhood where families can find childcare, a doctor, healthy food, an affordable family-sized home is a place where families choose and a place where families stay. In developing our facilities portfolio strategy map, which we'll share briefly, we need to ensure that our facilities support and advance our mission, vision, and strategies. This is best achieved by centering on the students, combined with clear strategic priorities that identify objectives within our business and operations teams that provide a foundation of support that enables the district to produce its targeted outcomes. For Columbus City Schools, the framing visual on the right side of this slide communicates, one, students remain at the center of our system. Very clear on that. Our asset decisions are not just about closing, consolidating, or repurposing buildings. It's about reimagining how our entire system can support a larger solution to serve our students and our neighborhoods and our communities. Given the external environment, all the growth that's happening, the new businesses that are coming in, et cetera, in some of our underserved neighborhoods, we really have to shift our narrative. We need to shift our narrative from right-sizing buildings to right-sizing impact. We need to shift our narrative from school closures to neighborhood transformation and how we can support that. And we need to shift our narrative from budget deficits, respectfully, to strategic reinvestment. I'll turn it over to Alex Trevino, who will talk a little bit about our strategy map.
So visually, we wanted to show how the three activities, new construction or build, portfolio optimization or reuse, and life cycle renewals or maintain, need balanced to get us to an optimal portfolio management strategy. You've probably seen this image a couple times, and you're probably going to keep seeing it over and over and over again. Because while we believe all three pillars must be operating well and independently, each one is also intrinsically linked. So for example, we'll need to rely on new construction to address our worst conditioned facilities, and it will also always be one of those levers we can pull to enact change within our organization. However, we have to always be thinking that the long-term investments that are required for new construction are going to force us to be mindful that we're not investing heavily in facilities that are queued up for that new construction phase in their lifetimes. Conversely, life cycle renewals are the backbone of how we maintain our facilities. But having said that, the investments that we make will need to make sense at each facility, and it will vary based on criteria such as the building's age, the quality of that construction, the anticipated useful life for any particular facility, natural weathering patterns, as well as damage and wear and tear that are sometimes outside of our control. Finally, portfolio optimization should always be forcing us to look at our total capacity for student enrollment and doing our very best to keep our newest and best facilities as close to full as possible, while also achieving a reasonable enrollment at every occupied facility. Facilities decisions are strategic portfolio choices, and now I'll cover our near-term portfolio planning focus areas. Number one will be updating the 2022 Facility Master Plan. This work will involve a small internal working group to update the work that was already produced in 2022. We're already looking at refreshed condition data, updating our enrollment data, and confirming the prioritization framework. Number two, the new construction or build will involve that same Facility Master Plan update. And as we always say, this is always long-range strategic planning. But keep in mind that our earliest actions might have a 4 to 5 year time frame, even if we were ready to launch a project today. So even with direction to launch a project right now, Keep in mind that project would likely not open until about 2031. Some projects might have a time frame of 10, 15, or even more years before they'd be actualized. And I also want to reinforce that new construction is always going to need to be on the table for two key reasons. Number one, as I said before, new construction is oftentimes going to be our catalyst for radical change, and that can be within our organization, but also within the communities we serve. The other key reason is that it is our best outlet for our worst conditioned facilities. Some of our facilities are far beyond the point where we can renovate them over a summer, and new construction really is the outlet to deal with those conditions. Focus area number 3 will be portfolio optimization or reuse. And this is what we also call as our school realignment process. It is a much more fluid and right now urgent process as a result of House Bill 311, although this process typically only occurs as needed. If we should see additional enrollment declines, we'll be forced to reckon with that overcapacity and the need to continue to right-size our portfolio. However, it also presents the opportunity to look at creative approaches to reuse, including land swaps with eligible entities, leases, and potential public-private partnerships that could deliver resources and services to the communities we serve, while also leveraging board-owned properties. And then finally, life cycle renewal or maintain. This area always sits in that middle time range from a planning timeframe perspective. Some of this work is reactive to real-life conditions, but much of it is focused on medium-range planning, where we're assessing conditions, looking at how to maximize individual assets' lifespans, and queuing up projects that meet specific objectives and improving conditions for our learners. These projects are truly important because they are the backbone of the strategy. Realistically, we can renew more than 2 to 4% of our portfolio annually, which means the vast majority of our investment resides in that maintain phase. That does not mean that all buildings receive equal investment, and that's where the real work for this strategy resides. We need to align vertically across the entire organization which investments make the most sense, at which facilities, and in what time frame. And so now we'll shift to the activities that will lead to these future recommendations. Number 1, an integrated team has been assembled to work on updating those data sources that we referred to earlier. That will include things such as enrollment projections, utilization reports, and facility condition assessments. Number 2, I need to make a special thank you to Dr. Brown and his team for working with us on a weighted prioritization matrix and dashboard, where we will be dashboarding all of the schools. And that work will focus on using objective and technical data and criteria to minimize subjectivity. Number 3, the plan is to narrow down our total portfolio of schools from 109 and categorize them into the buckets of maintain, reuse, or build. And that'll be a presentation made to the board. And while this work is really focused on the new build leg of the strategy, the reality is that once you dig into the work, you realize that you really cannot look at any one of those 3 strategies independently. The same data that will guide new construction will also lead the work behind maintain as well as reuse. And finally, items 4 and 5, we will be working with the Academic and Facilities Alignment Committee, or AFAC, to include things such as ed visioning and ed specifications for both short and long-term requirements, and also looking at what district-level engagement looks like versus project-level engagement.
So that concludes our presentation. We're open for any feedback, any questions. Just a couple of highlights. We're in one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. The community is really excited and supportive and understands the role that public schools play in attracting talent, resources, et cetera. We feel like there is an inflection point that we're at right now, and if we can balance our portfolio across those 3 buckets that we've identified, we believe that we will better utilize our limited resources and support developing strong neighborhoods and neighborhoods that are currently underserved. I'll defer to the chair.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding this, then there will be a, the goal is to produce an updated FMP in January 27. Is that correct?
Yes, it's an updated FMP to highlight the new build possibilities. We will also be bringing forth recommendations on the other two legs of the stool,
Okay.
portfolio optimization. So it'll be an integrated plan
Yeah.
that we will be presenting to the board in January 2027, if not earlier.
Great. Just logistically, how does that work? Do we get that ahead of time and review, or does that is that released publicly all at once and we're kind of seeing that?
So in a perfect world, we would vet initial drafts through committees such as this, receive your feedback, make sure that the superintendent and the treasurer have bought off on it, and then we would bring it forth as a board item. I believe that we're looking to accelerate some of that work, given some of the political dynamics that are occurring at the end of this fiscal year, given some of the information that we learned yesterday about our financial situation. So to answer your question, there's a normal vetting process that we would utilize. We may be looking to expedite that to get information to the board sooner than later.
Thank you. Questions or thoughts from the committee?
I have a question. I was wondering, given the financial responsibilities that are coming down from the state, how much would that impede these plans? Are we going to adjust as we get those? Like when we have to cut, how are we going to present to the public that, hey, we're doing this new build, but also we get these cuts?
I'll do my best to at least start the conversation. I think part of the answer is going to need to be to help the public understand the difference between the different budget sources.
Yeah.
So while there will be a need for a general fund budget reduction, at the surface, it does not really have an impact on the capital budget, although there are some places where there are some interfaces that certainly can be explored. That's maybe the simplest way to say it.
I think you did that well.
Did that answer your question?
Yep, it does.
And just speaking, from the board too, I think you're 100% right, Ms. Price. I think we, that falls on the superintendent and the board as well to keep hammering that fact home, because it's not, just apparent. There are these two different sources.
Sorry, can I ask, just backing up for a second, what is the news that came down? I don't think I'm aware of what we're talking about.
I think she's referred to just the fact that we have likely an additional, based on the presentation the treasurer made last night, and that we've known for some time. We've cut $50 million from operations, but we likely have an additional $50 million to go. So you're saying how can we be building when we have to cut this $50 million? And the answer is there's this $60 million fund that is for capital improvements. But it's not necessarily clear to the community that those two funds are, we're not allowed to spend the capital improvement funds on operations. Do we know the, do we have a clear attendance, maybe not attendance isn't the right word. Do we know how many kids are in our district for this next year yet versus last year? And if we have hit the bottom and are bouncing up yet, or is it still too early to ask that?
I think it's still a little too early to answer that definitively, but our enrollment looks pretty stable in comparison to last year. I would describe our enrollment as relatively stable.
Okay. And that would be the first year in a long time that we have not gone down. Is that right?
Actually, post-pandemic, we went up for a little bit.
Okay.
And there were some political pressures that are still impacting our second language community that
Okay.
have impacted enrollment significantly.
Yeah.
That is still playing out, though we've seen a large influx of folks who are registering right now, and our numbers, even before this last week of enrollment, were steady and comparable to last year. So I think we're on good footing.
Okay. That's good. Great.
I have a question. I want to thank you for this presentation and also for pointing out at the beginning of this presentation that the growth of Columbus does come at expense to certain communities in our city that don't experience the level of growth that other neighborhoods in our city experience. So as it appears that the Board of Education and the district in general is committed to a stronger partnership with city government, my question is what kind of things are underway to assess what community needs are in what parts of the city, and what role the district plays in community programming from us or from the city, from our buildings, offering those services that people need in those communities. Because, as you all have presented, it's an important strategic priority, and it also helps contribute to the growth of the district and those communities that need the resources. So I guess to reiterate the question, what sort of, if any, conversations have we had or are we having with the city, especially now that we're seeing this working group together? Yeah.
So thank you for the question, Mr. Lynch. And, the superintendent's not here, but I think she's done an amazing job of extending and developing partnerships within the community. And it's recognized by the community. I know one of the initiatives that she's working on is it's a joint Columbus City Schools and Mayor Mr. Hardin. They have a committee that has been formed, and I think it's actually maybe meeting in the next few weeks here. But I think that's one of the committees that are looking to address some of these opportunities. The glass is half full. I know it's challenging, but I do believe it's an opportunity for us to figure out how we can come together to benefit some of these neighborhoods and communities. That's one example.
Can I expand on that a little bit? Because I was at that meeting when they announced so I guess to be more specific, do we know what kind of work is underway or if there's any kind of deliverables that have been set for that working group, that committee, whatever we want to call it? Because at the very least, the city identifying what each community's needs are and how we can adapt to that is important. But I guess the community is probably pretty eager to understand what the specific work is that's being done with council. And if we don't know yet and it's still like information, that's okay, but that's an opportunity.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak to the details. I know they just launched the committee month, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I think actually some of that is still in development. I think this next session or this next meeting may dive into that a little bit deeper.
Okay. All right.
Board Member Sims?
Thank you, Chair Katzenmeier. I did have a follow-up question to our colleague's question. Could you just share, in developing this plan so far, what, specific conversations have you had with the City of Columbus? Because, it was stated publicly that they would be conducting a review of our portfolio, which, was surprising to me. But could you share with this committee today, up until this date, what conversations about this plan have you had with the City of Columbus?
So this plan is in draft format. We've had a lot of conversations with community leaders, not specifically or necessarily just the city, We've had some conversations with some business leaders in the community, more or less like a listening tour, informal, nothing formalized, but just getting input. And we've also recognized that, this portfolio strategy piece, it's not necessarily a new strategy per se, but it's emphasizing the need to look across our entire portfolio as we're making decisions. Right now, we're heavy in the life cycle maintenance piece. Right, we get the PI levy funds, we do summer projects, but the other two levers we haven't exercised to our full ability, and we just want to recognize that we need to balance that portfolio. To answer your question specifically, it's in the development stages, and we hope to expedite some of that work so that we can start doing things. That's our focus.
Okay, about the feedback, could you share some of those points of feedback, what they have been?
Yeah, so we've had conversations with Morpsey. Morpsey has been an amazing partner, specifically as it relates to data sharing and information. There's the gentleman from United Way. I forget his name. He's an amazing data guru.
Michael Wilkos.
Michael Wilkos?
Yes, yes. He's been a partner. We've had some conversations. So those are two examples of individuals that we've reached out to. As it specifically relates to data and information and trends and what are we seeing. And then, I have had some informal conversations with, folks from, is it Baker Hostetler, the law firm, and some other general conversations.
Okay.
I don't have the list in front of me.
No, that's all right. Thank you.
If you have any suggestions for folks that we probably should engage, we'd definitely be open to that.
Oh, it will be a long list, but yes. And then my next question here today is when it says new construction, you said that this capital portfolio plan, as it's called here on slide 10, would include recommendations for new construction. Well, that includes specific sites to build on. Is it going to be we should build one high school, one middle school, or is it going to be the board should build a high school at this address? Or not necessarily a high school, whatever the recommendation is, but is it going to be tied to specific addresses and specific parcels?
Board Member Simmons, I would expect that it will be specific projects. It is possible it may not list addresses, just depending upon what we may identify that there's a need for a project. We may not necessarily have a identified parcel of land where it would fit, if that makes sense. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse either. We don't have the.
Yeah, I asked because I'm concerned, and my next question here is for the treasurer. So if we get this plan in January, and we had some dialogue at the last committee meeting, which I wasn't able to attend, but I did watch, and there was about the OFCC deadlines. And so actually, let me go back to you, Director Trevino, for a second. So if this plan comes to us in January, when would we need, in order to receive money from OFCC in fiscal year 28, or yes, in fiscal year 2028, which would be, July 1st, 2027 due to June 2028, when would we need to send a project to OFCC?
I'm going to do my best to answer that question, and I'm going to stay out of fiscal years because I'm going to get myself confused. And then we will back into fiscal year after we get calendar year. And mind you, OFCC has all new staff too. Like their leadership that we worked with have all retired. We're still in communication, but it will be a little bit like starting from scratch in terms of kind of building the relationships and the rapport and getting our footing underneath us from a time frame standpoint. My understanding is that they would need to go to their controlling board sometime in the late spring. So we will need to have our decisions to them roughly. So keep in mind too, they have their whole own process. Like we're going to run our own process to make sure we understand the projects that we desire to do. They will then run their own process, doing their own enrollment projections on our behalf. And there, I think it will ask for roughly a 1-year time frame to get all that work complete. So if we had our FMP ready by January and were we given direction to move it forward, I would expect we'd be looking for OFCC approval spring of the following year.
Okay, so, but we'd need to submit something to them, you said late spring 2027?
Correct.
Okay, for possible disbursement in spring of 2028.
That is my best understanding.
Okay, now, my next question, in order to send them that project, do we have to have our 70% of the funding ready to go in order to initiate that year-long process? Or at what point in that year-long process does OFCC say, you don't have the money to do this, we're not moving forward on this conversation or this work until you have the money available?
Board Member Simmons, that is another question that I'm not 100% clear on, because keep in mind that the most typical process is that a school system would be pursuing a bond issue. So you do all that planning work, knowing that you're going to ask voters, not always, but most often in November, to vote yes. And that is largely what precipitates that whole timeline. But if the district is going to exercise existing funding, like that's another wrinkle we would have to talk through with OFCC in terms of their expectations of commitment of funding. Does that
So
make
that
sense?
could possibly be anywhere from, say we sent this to them April 3rd, my birthday, April 3rd, we sent it off to them, late spring. Or excuse me, that's early spring, actually. Excuse me, that's early spring. Okay, say we sent it to them April 3rd. And so on your year calendar, we get to April 3rd, 2028. Anywhere in between that year, they could say, whoa, you don't have, it's just not a real project until you have the funding available, so it doesn't make sense for us to keep doing these enrollment. I'm just trying to get a sense because of when in order to move forward with them, it could happen 4 months into that, 6 months, 8 months, we don't quite know.
I'm going to give you a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Which is outside of OFCC, one of the things that I think has been a real challenge for us is we don't have these conversations in secrecy, right? So at the point I'm making up numbers, at the point we identify 3 schools and we've identified a way to fund them and we're having a conversation with OFCC, we should also be simultaneously having those conversations with communities about what is going to happen for them so that it's not happening to them. Yeah. So if we don't have the internal commitment to the funding to then go through all that process to then say, never mind, we don't want to move forward, it puts us in an incredibly awkward position.
Treasurer Cook, do you happen to know when OFCC's deadline? I just want to know when, in order for, and on this timeline that's been established of late spring to spring of 2028, late spring 2028, and if we don't have it, I would like it to be researched. And, because this was my question a couple months ago, what I'd like to know is when is the deadline for the board to receive those funds that we'd have to actually have our money ready to go with them.
We will need to research that. Again, on the funding piece, I want to speak to capacity. Depends on the scope of the project and what we're doing overall. We're positioning now for existing bond debt to go away, be paid off 2032. We obviously, as I discussed last night, have operating needs, so I'm going to watch the timeline on this closely with respect to the deadlines with OFCC. Again, the scope of the project and what we may or may not be able to do from a debt issuance standpoint, a bond issue with the public. I don't know that we're right there at this point, but I also don't want to speak to the scope, because I think to Mr. Trevino's point, we may have a smaller option, as we've talked about before, with a COPS deal, depending on the scope of the project at that point.
The reason I ask is I'm very concerned about, we have to get in the queue, and to your point, they have to do their years-long review process. And I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations at our board meeting yesterday, and in November 2023, the voters authorized a $60,492,000 permanent improvement levy. Today, if we wanted to get that $60,492,000 buying power, we'd have to spend $67,785,000 in some dollars, right? And so the same way you go to the grocery store and you fill up your shopping cart, because $60 is not going to fill up a grocery cart, but you fill in 2023, when you filled up your grocery cart, your shopping basket, your shopping basket, when you filled that up with $60 worth of groceries, if you wanted to get those same $60 today worth of groceries, you'd have to spend $67. And so I'm just concerned, if we're not going to have a site identified in January, that means there's nothing the treasurer can't call the financial institutions and ask for, and make an arrangement for a loan, assuming the board has approved it and done on those steps and authorized him to, right? So if we don't have a site identified in January, I'm not sure what the plan is. I think if we're going to call something a plan, it needs to, there's just like a SMART goal, it's got to have certain aspects to it, right? And so it needs to be something that can be executed upon. And if there's not a site identified, then that's potentially adding to the timeline, because then it's going to be, we're here in August, and we have this capital portfolio plan by January, right? It's been a long time in the works, but we're getting here. We're on the track now. It's great. I'm happy about that. But if it's in January, well, we got to take 4 to 6 months to come up with where we're going to put these new buildings, right? That's going to add to the timeline. And then that's going to potentially create a scenario where we're not receiving OFCC funds until, maybe even FY30, and then that means we can't get anything under construction. And every year, our pre-PI fund, we say 60 million, but it's buying us less and less every year. And that means we're buying less school. And now's the cheapest time to build. And so I want to go back to my question about, I want to know what exactly you are communicating to the administration that you're going to have a deliverable, or to the committee that you're going to have a deliverable, this capital portfolio plan. But I just really want to understand what's in it, so then when we do get to that threshold, there's something to look back on and to say, what was promised and what was delivered. And so I want to get clarification. Will there be a site recommendation? Will the recommendations for new construction be tied to specific sites that we can actually move forward about discussing? Because if not, then we can really just use the recommendations from our last FMP, which is one high school, one middle school, one elementary. Those recommendations would still make sense.
Yeah, Board Member Simmons, I would expect that the recommendations will have sites. And keep in mind, your 2022 FMP has a segment 4, which provides specific school buildings at specific sites. What it did not do was name the rest of the projects, those projects, but it did name the next segment, and that's what I would expect you would find in this update.
Thank you. And then my next question, Treasurer Cook, about how much, if we wanted to do a high school, how much is that going to cost us? Are we looking at right now?
It's a great question. I've had some conversations about a year ago with our facilities team. I would need to refresh it. I think it depends on the size. We've referenced kind of that normal high school, small. Do you remember off the top of your head? I know we were spitballing because we didn't know specs, et cetera.
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. We can certainly get those and bring them back. Just keep in mind, especially at the high school, we will have our biggest exposure for LFIs or locally funded initiatives to deal with things like exterior athletics, fixed seat auditoriums.
Which are 100% local. Because OFCC only pays for the classrooms.
Yeah. If I recall in those conversations, the COPS deal, I know we had some figures, I won't banner that around. It would be difficult to finance with our existing PI dollars a high school that gives us everything that we as a community would value. But again, I would like to have the opportunity to go back and kind of refresh those numbers because they're just not sticking out in my head. A COPS deal is going to really, I think, we're going to come up short on what we value as a community for a high school. I think if we look at a middle school or an elementary or two, those may be feasible depending on the ed specs as we drill that down. But a high school, in my opinion, from what I recall, would be a bit of a stretch.
And that would be off of the 150 million?
That would be the COPS deal, the potential 155 million, depending on rates, market conditions, et cetera.
The reason I ask is when I look back at our 22 FMP, the total project cost for Marion Franklin I will just read verbatim what it says. It says segment number 4, project cost summary, high school number 1, current site of Marion Franklin High School / the middle school, and it's, total local cost 84 million, total project cost 111 million. And so here we are now in August of 2026, 4 years have gone by. Yeah, we've got this $60 million, but we know that's not going to buy us $60 million worth of stuff like it would have in 2023. And it's going to, so you're telling me that we can't build a high school off of 155, where it's going to be difficult. It will be difficult to have everything we value off of 155 million. And you're saying that based on numbers in August 2026.
Yeah, I'm saying those numbers are actually about a year ago, actually, so I would say 25. But yes, I think we would come up short. I'll reserve the right to recalculate, but I just don't think we'll get there.
And potentially, I will close and just say, I'm concerned with the timeline. I think it's going to cost us a lot of money to continue to have this decision be down the road. And, if we're not looking at, whenever we potentially hit that financial trigger with OFCC to where it's time we have our money available, the project costs are just going to increase over the next 2 years. And there's also not a guarantee that our the bond market will be favorable to us. This is not a scenario where we're just pinching pennies and we're putting a little bit more money into our savings account, and then we're going to have enough money to do it. And so the cost to borrow this could potentially increase, minimally, drastically, in many different ways over the next 2 years. And so I'd be concerned if the product delivered in January is not something that we can actually take and have, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to build this recommendation at this site, and something we can move forward to do a COPS deal with. Because if we're going to add time to this project, we're going to be able to afford less school.
One question that's kind of adjacent to that. So when, and I appreciate the fact that we haven't done this in 10 years or more, I believe. So when we are going to the OFCC, do we have to provide, do we have to provide the design as well, or are we just like site, school, estimated cost? Like how much do we need to give them to go before the controlling board in terms of information?
So, Board Member Katzenmeier, in my experience, we don't need to give them much of anything.
Okay.
You got to remember, we're a bit of an outlier from a school system standpoint. I mean, I would like to think we're reasonably sophisticated in terms of what we bring to the table. They're oftentimes working with school systems that may only have 1, 3, 5 buildings.
Okay.
And are never going to go through this process again. But what does make us very unique and challenging is our size. The quantity of buildings we have, our open enrollment, our choice programs, the things that make it very difficult for us to anticipate enrollments, all the things that we chatter about constantly. So that is where we really need to drive the discussions with the state. At the end of the day, no offense to OFCC, but everything for them is very formula-driven.
Okay.
At the end of the day, where are the students coming from? Are we all confident the students are going to show up? How many more seats do we have on the books to build? Here is the formula for number of students, gross square footage of building. Does the district desire to have any amenities above and beyond the state's minimum requirements? If they do, what are they? Here's what they cost. Boom, here's your formula. They will expect the district to bring the site, a buildable site, to the table. They do not pay for site acquisition. But they will largely lead that planning effort. We can be as involved as we choose to be.
Okay.
So through the chair, if I may, and Mr. Simmons, I really appreciate the questions, especially around the timeline. And it might be beneficial because we have other committee members that may not be as versed and technical as it relates to the timeline, but I think it's important that we understand what that timeline looks like. And I don't want to steal any Dr. Brown's thunder, but I believe part of his presentation, we were going to ask around, does it make sense for us to bring a new construction or a new build timeline to inform this committee of what it looks like, so that then we can back map when we need decisions made in the next few months, right, to get to something early next year. So through the chair, if it makes sense to you, we would probably ask, would you like us to bring a new build timeline to this community in the next ETRM meeting?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. That would be really helpful. You agree, Board Member Simmons?
I do. I think that will be cheapest, because what I was really underscoring is just every month adds to the project cost, and every month we don't have more tax money coming in. That's the way the levy works, and so I do think that'd be cheaper. And also, there's a legislative urgency, because all the things about 70% and how many seats we have and how much money OFCC has, that's all subject to change on a biennium basis, if not sooner than that. And so the legislative framework could change from under us.
Yeah. And so if I'm understanding what you're saying, Mr. Woods, that at the next ETRM committee meeting, we could kind of we could discuss that timeline and how it works back to what we need to be doing in the next month or two to make sure we're moving it forward.
We want a new building, through the chair, if we want a new building by 2030, 2031,
Yeah.
what should we be, how do you back map that? When
Yeah.
do we engage with OFCC, et cetera? We can share that with the committee and have some dialogue and discussion around that.
I think that'd be great, and then we'd have that kind of teed up so that when the new plan comes out in January, we can kind of move forward as quickly as possible. Great.
Can I ask for one more thing on that as well? I know this is going to seem extreme, but to Brandon's point, the question that keeps going through my head when we have this conversation is, are we going to, what's going to get us more? Going through OFCC and potentially being slowed down by OFCC while we're trying to outpace inflation, or just going for it, ignoring OFCC and building without them because inflation? So I think one thing that might be helpful too is if you can bring a cost comparison of here's what we think, here's what we're hearing, or here's what the numbers in the construction industry are estimating for inflation next year, right? Or the next 2 years, versus here's what OFCC is going to be able to offer us. I'm really curious if the outcome is maybe the juice is worth the squeeze, maybe it's not.
And I have a question as well. Have you ever thought an add-on where we have land? What's those, any ideas swimming around that?
Like an addition on.
An addition to
Or school.
if you're talking about high school,
Yeah.
an addition that already has some of those improvement plan, and then adding, and they have the land available. What's anything about that?
Committee Member Price, so Dr. Brown and I actually had this exact same conversation just this afternoon. So I think we have to put all options on the table. Just understand that there are always pros and cons to every option. So one of the cons to the addition option, I don't know if it's as big of an impact at a middle school, high school, but it is definitely at an elementary school that it is oftentimes very difficult to put an incremental addition onto a cafeteria and a gymnasium. And those are the spaces where we tend to see the most pressure then put on a building. Like classrooms are not that difficult to continue to replicate and add wings, but there's always a core infrastructure. So it's your gym, your cafeteria, your library spaces that are very difficult to scale up. And now you're adding all that additional load. And so there may be places where it will make sense, but it does create other issues.
I'm glad that all options are on the table, though. And I support that too, Ms. Price, because, it seems like we're going to have a few different things that are.
Yeah, that are happening.
Yeah.
That way, high schools that don't get selected or doesn't fall into the parameters, we gotta wait again, those communities. Yeah, we didn't make it in 22, we're not gonna make it in 31.
Yeah.
So that gives them something.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to ask, with the going back to the capital portfolio plan, will there be specific project cost estimates, not just how much this project would cost to do it, but also this is what the board would have to either the financial options, this is what the board would have to put on a levy as a bond if we wanted to do it, or this is what the board would have to commit out of PI in order to, or is there going to be financial information under the recommendations as well to really enable some decision making?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Simmons. I think there has to be. I also think there could potentially be some cost savings recommendations as part of that plan. So yes, I would expect that we would see some financial information.
Yeah, and the benefit, because our old schools are so small and the state minimums are, significantly larger than many of our buildings, it'd be also good to know, to share with the board, if you recommend you build this elementary school, let us know what else that would take offline as well, potentially. Obviously, maybe not that specific building, but if you can say, you could consolidate 2 into 1, or it'd be good to have that information also.
Would you like to move forward to 4.2?
Yeah.
Yes, Brandon, they're great questions, but I do want to go home at some point.
Well, I'll talk fast.
That's all right. It's important, man. Let's have the right conversation.
I will say, consolidation with new facilities is a way easier conversation to have.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of an update. So I can't go through this material fairly quickly because many of you have seen this, or at least parts of this before. Again, I just want to provide some background, board actions to date, the impact of Senate Bill 311, if that were to continue through. Talking about our completed consolidations, the impact that they've had on the enrollment in the buildings that we are now sending students to. Talking about some planned consolidations, buildings that remain at risk, and frankly, that's the short list. As we look at enrollment, we have some buildings that are at that cusp that we want to address as well. And all that will be packaged here. And then at the end, as Mr. Woods has indicated, an ask about whether or not you all would like us to come back and talk about some proposals for consolidation and how those fit in with a long-term capital plan, along with, again, timelines for long-term capital planning. I appreciate very much that working with Mr. Woods and Alex around this planning process and looking at holistically on all three legs of that stool, because these things are all interconnected. And I'll try to speak to that as we go through. So again, back in 2024, the board asked the superintendent to put together a committee to begin working through a process for consolidation and bringing recommendations back to the board. That was brought back to the board in June of '24. The board took some additional time to do additional research, to engage another partner to do some, again, engagement with the community around that. But in December of '24, came forward with a list of recommendations which are listed here, and then came back in December of 2025 with another list of resolutions for consolidations. Senate Bill 311 has applied significant pressure to us. It speaks directly to underused, or as they define it, unused facilities. And if it, at this point, it is passed through the Senate, if it were to pass through the House, it would require us to offer some of our buildings that would be deemed unused, that is under 60% utilization, for sale or lease. And again, those buildings would be required to be sold or at appraised market value as an educational facility rather than at the true market value for the facility. I find that particular point, point of privilege here, I find that particular point very aggravating because if the entity, the private entity that buys that chooses not to use it for its full duration, then we're selling low, but we have to buy back high because we have to buy back at market value.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, wait, can we pause there for a second? Did you say that if, we had to sell to, say, a charter school, and then they either folded or decided to cease operation, we'd have to buy it back?
If we wish to buy that property back, now we have to buy it back at full market value.
Even if it's being used as an educational facility after sale?
I'm glad everybody else is getting aggravated too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, trust me, yeah. I've been watching this one. It makes, yeah, anyway.
And again, underuse is 60% of utilization. So at the end of the 25-26 school year, you see the list here of buildings that were all at or below 60%. Again, there's some fluctuation on that because a few kids make quite a difference right at that 60% threshold. I might add also, if you want to add to your aggravation on this, when we look at utilization, we're looking at a building and how it's used educationally. The way that the state is defining this in this particular proposed legislation is based on occupancy permit, which is not how anyone would want to use a building for educational purposes. It's how many people you can get out the building if there's a fire. Occupancy permit, it's a far higher number. So if you look at the occupancy permit for this room, we'd never put that many kids in this room to educate them. So we're actively looking at our facilities and what it means in terms of utilization based on educational use, and looking at that very carefully, because there are some facilities here that were designed specifically for the use that they have, and to use occupancy permit to evaluate their utilization is absurd. So I want to go through some completed consolidations. I'm just sort of walk through all of them fairly quickly. Broadway closed for instruction at the end of last year. Broadway students went to Eastgate, are beginning at Eastgate tomorrow. The alignment there, again, was moving kids from an older facility to a newer learning environment, and it preserves the investment in Eastgate and East High School. Fairwood, same thing, closed for instruction at the end of last year. Those students are going to be enrolled and be attending Ohio Avenue. Again, we're moving from an old facility to a modern facility that the community invested in. And we're also, again, adding to the feeder pattern for East High School. So building the enrollment of East High School over time. This coupled with the addition of a academy at East High School, we've already seen a bump in enrollment from the academy. We're yet to see the bump in enrollment that will come from the expansion of the catchment area. So we're already moving in the right direction with East. Moeller was also closed. And again, the students were moved to Livingston and Lincoln Park Elementaries, again, making better use of those facilities. Those are modernized facilities, preserving the investments in Livingston and Lincoln Park. This year, we've got two sets of consolidations that are planned. Whoops. First one's Como. Como's planned to close at the end of the year. Oakland Park is anticipated to receive the majority of the students who attend Como, but we're engaging in a boundary process with the community to inform where those boundaries will be. And we're doing enrollment balancing across the entire region, so everything east of 71, south of Morse Road, and north of 670. All those buildings we're going to balance the enrollment across, and we're working off a preliminary basic educational specification, which is the idea that every elementary building should have at least 2 sets of grade progression. So 2 kindergartens, 2 first grades, 2 second grades, all the way up through, minimum. Como didn't have that. We have another building in that area that doesn't have that. It leads to underutilization. We're also looking to have students served as close as possible to their home community. So if you're receiving special ed services, rather than being bused all the way across town, we're going to try to serve you as close as we can to your home. Same for ESL, et cetera. We're going to engage the community in that process. I'm happy to say that, that two-way communication and engagement with the community shaped the boundaries for Broadway and Moeller in the past year. The final boundaries that were used for both of those were absolutely informed by community input in both cases. Everett, again, it's one of our oldest facilities. Again, we need to move that program to a different facility. That will be part of the conversation, and one of the things that if you all are interested, we'd be more than happy to bring a proposal coming forward. And then in the out year, looking to 28, 29, there's some things that had to be sequenced because there's some changes that need to happen in terms of where staff are, et cetera, to be able to accommodate the moves for our high schools. But Buckeye and McGuffey both will close. The facilities will close in 28, 29. With McGuffey, the CAUSE program moving to downtown high school. This, again, will provide an improved learning environment for CAUSE students while aligning, again, CTE programming to the emerging academy model as the CTE pieces will be moved around. This requires some staggering of things as we move through the process of transitioning downtown high school to accommodate that. And Buckeye, as it closes, we initially looked at moving Buckeye 7th and 8th grades into Marion Franklin High School, something akin to what we've done with South and Linden McKinley. Not a sufficient number of students to keep Marion Franklin open. It wouldn't work. And frankly, the blended middle high school model is not, community feedback on that has not been positive. Folk would like us to have more traditional grade banding. The past FMP, which we've heard reference to, and I heard mention of the Marion Franklin site, identified the Marion Franklin site for a new Southside High School. So what we've done here is align the recommendation for the consolidation to the new FMP process, consolidating the high school students at the Marion Franklin site and moving Buckeye to South High School and standardizing the grade configurations for all the elementary schools in the South neighborhood. So the sixth grades would come out of that and go into South High School. South High School would be a large middle school. Obviously, we'd have to rename and rebrand all the schools in this area. And we would have been, again, leaning into the FMP with the intention to have a new Southside High School. Much of this is about preserving the site, because if we lose this site, and right now this site is vulnerable to Senate Bill 311, if we lose this site, we lose the opportunity to develop a new Southside High School. One that could have athletic facilities on the site. And this is a site that's large enough that we could actually do construction. It's sort of what we would call a self-swing site. We could serve the students in the current building while we build a new high school on that site.
Okay, there's a community out there, there's a community out there.
Yeah.
Because South High School, we just, it's like Linda McKinley. It's like we put a lot of money into that. So we're going to turn it into, I think you said a middle school?
Yeah.
Super middle school?
Which was the original FMP plan. So we're just.
That was a 22?
The 22 FMP plan, that was the original plan. And again, if we're going to have a new Southside High School, the only way to accommodate that is on the Marion Franklin site at this point.
Right.
Finally, Duxbury Park, again, arts program, again, the board made it clear that, the ideal and what's been communicated to the community over time would be a new school on the Fort Hays campus. But I think as what should be evident in this conversations, we have many construction needs. And so how this would fall in the priority right now, we may need to find a bridge solution on the in-between in order to keep the program. This is a program that has been very important to the community over time, and one that I would enjoy the opportunity to come forward and present an option that would preserve that program and buy us time to be able to honor that desire to have it on the Fort Hays campus in the long run. Bringing this all together, to sort of summarize it, we've had some guiding principles that have shaped this work over time. I think you've heard it over time. We want to serve students in the best possible facility that we can, learning environments that we can. Part of that is also preserving community investments. We're in this space, and Mr. Trevino mentioned it earlier, and we're looking at prioritizing projects, and one of the things that is sort of driving that is where do students live now? Students have moved over time. Where our students live has changed. We have some modernized facilities that are center city that don't have as many students in those neighborhoods as they used to. On the other hand, around the periphery of the city, we have more students than will fit in the buildings. We also looked at birth rates. When we look at birth rates, 4 or 5 years down the road, are there going to be enough students to continue to fill this building? Are birth rates actually increasing in some areas? They are. They tend to be around the periphery of the city. So there's a clear need for some additional construction. So how do we manage and honor the investments that have been made, make best use of that so our students and the community get to use those schools that we've already invested in? And how do we plan for future construction, et cetera, to address the growing need that we have and the growing population that we have in some of our communities? And then finally, as we think about that, you heard me speak earlier about trying to locate programming as close as possible to where students live. In like fashion, if we're going to talk about citywide draws, well, let's move them to the center of the city wherever possible. So again, we're minimizing transportation times for students, and we're maximizing access. More students have access to it when we move these things as close as possible to center city. So these are the drivers as we look through these solutions. The one outlier in that, again, is moving to Marion Franklin. It's all about preserving the opportunity to have a new Southside High School. Every place else that we've looked so far, it's moving students into better and more modern facilities. One is, again, just a preservation of what we need to move forward. So what does this look like overall? So this is the same list of schools, just ordered a little bit differently. And you'll see, and now I'm going to flip to my own because, wow, is that hard to see up there? The first three buildings closed. Downtown High School, again, underutilized currently, but we're going to put cause in it. We'll absolutely make positive use of that facility. East High School, already, again, seeing a bump in enrollment. We're approaching 60% just because we've put an academy model there. We have yet to see the influx of students from the change in the catchment areas, but that's going to add 300 or 400 more students over time. Because what used to be Broadway is now going to be in Eastgate, which feeds. What used to be Fairwood is now part of Ohio, which feeds. So we've built a feeder pattern for that. Eastgate Elementary was an underutilized facility, had less than 60% utilization. It is now closer to 90%. So we have now moved our students from Broadway to a modernized facility, and we're, again, honoring taxpayer dollars, and students have a better experience for it. Marion Franklin, I mentioned, again, if we move all the Southside High School students into Marion Franklin, we'll easily meet the criteria we need to maintain this facility and maintain the potential for new construction in that area. Ohio Elementary, again, was under that threshold. It's, again, close to 90% at this point. So the actions that the board took, and I don't want to portray this as easy in any way, shape, or fashion. Consolidating buildings is hard work, particularly when you don't have new construction to go with it. But in each of these cases, the outcome's been positive. We're making better utilization of, again, community investments. Our students are getting to use those schools. And in each case, it sort of fits or dovetails together into a longer-term strategy for our system. Again, Columbus Gifted, Duxbury, both would like to come back and provide some planning. And the buildings that haven't been addressed here, we need to have a plan for it. We need to discuss, we need to have some thoughts around that. In the other committee, the AFAC committee, we did talk about the academic return on investment for the gender academies, and we provided some additional information tied to them showing, declining enrollment for over a decade in both of those. I think we're going to have to take some action there. And again, it's an opportunity for us to preserve facilities and rethink how we provide instruction. So in the end, and again, I've been talking fast and to try to honor people's time, would really like to have the opportunity to come back to the committee, talk about some additional options for consolidation, which also would mean some additional closures. All of that work is being done in conjunction with Mr. Woods and Mr. Trevino with, again, all three legs of this capital plan. So you've heard me intimate the idea that we're talking about consolidation in a way that supports Marion Franklin. You hear us intimate that we've been using this as a process to honor and use buildings that were built in places where there aren't quite as many kids anymore. What you'll hear as we move forward is, where we need new construction to meet demand for student need in terms of where we need more seats. And there will be some opportunities, I think, for consolidation that come with that. And that's a much easier conversation to have when you say, hey, we're going to have a new building here, and then we'll consolidate in this area, and we'll, students will have a better learning experience as a product of that. And I'm excited about that opportunity, and I'm excited that we'll have that opportunity, if it's the will of this group, to come back and to talk about both of those conversations and how they come together.
That's great. I appreciate this. Thank you. I think what makes me I think it seems like there's been some great wins here already. I think what makes me nervous, and I think you were saying that, I think we're saying the same thing, but I think what makes me nervous, what makes the community nervous, is having the discussion on consolidation without the other piece, where they're going, how it's going to be better for them. And I'm even a little nervous just kind of having that discussion, even in a committee. You know, I think we have to be, you know, cognizant about what alarm bells that raises in the community. So when we say, you know, bringing back additional options, are you saying kind of doing that in conjunction with the next version of the master plan or of the FMP, or do you mean before that?
I think the answer is yes to both. Senate Bill 311 puts some pressure on us to act, particularly if we wish to preserve some of our investments. And preserve some of the land and/or facilities that we have. We have buildings that are just simply at risk, and if we don't take action on them, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
I don't gamble. I don't like to gamble. I am so pleased that we're now to a place where we're talking about all three components of capital planning. There's definitely an interconnection here, and we're not talking about consolidation devoid of this. So the conversation we're having about prioritization of projects absolutely informs how we're thinking about consolidation. These things are not left hand, right hand, not talking. We're talking and we're coordinating these as we move forward. So, you know, I think there is an urgency, again, to name where we need to build. I think we all recognize that. And that, I think, will help inform some of this as we move forward. But the reality is, if we don't take action on some of these buildings, then as is, if this legislation passes, we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
Does Senate Bill 311 allow for a plan like this will, is it like, you know, how's that work? On X date, if you're not if you're not 60% by this date, you gotta sell it, or what's that looking like right now?
So there are, I think, two pieces tied to Senate Bill 311 that I think speak to that. One of the dates has gone by, so it's that in November, you know, we would have to get data to the state. The state would then publish a list of facilities that would be available for sale, that we would have to offer for sale if somebody asked. Then way down in towards the end, there is a way for us to appeal to the state. And I would argue if we have a plan and we've been acting on the plan and we can demonstrate that we've been acting on the plan and consolidating buildings, then, you know, to lose a facility that is part of a plan takes away our ability as a community to make use of. So, for example, you know, if we have a plan in place for Marion Franklin that says this is what we're going to do, if they were not willing to accept that, they literally are taking away our ability to serve students at a new South High School or Southside High School.
Southside.
So,
So I bring up the reconsolidation of Mifflin, of Behave.
Beach Grove, yeah.
No, not Beechcroft.
Oh.
Brookhaven.
Brookhaven.
That didn't go smoothly for a while, but it went smoothly. And they had community meetings, and, you know, because Brookhaven was a big sport. And Mifflin wasn't. And so that happened over a process of 5 years of getting the kids in there and everybody having restorative practices, parent meetings, committee meetings. That seemed to work out. So we're going to have to do a big plan for the South to Marion Franklin, because we're talking about neighborhoods that don't get along.
No doubt that anytime you talk about consolidating high schools. And I've lived through this in a couple of places. It is a challenge, and it involves a ton of community engagement. And I think the students are often the best arbiters
They
of
are.
the solution in the end.
are. They
You know,
were.
So,
That
when you
happened with
rename,
Mifflin.
rebrand, you bring the
Yep.
kids together, and I appreciate the lean into restorative practices. There are members of my team that I think would be more than happy to lean in to help lead that type of work as we engage in
And the
it.
students are.
And the students will lead the direction on that in the long run. I have great
Rebranded
faith.
so it's neither.
Yeah, you can't disenfranchise one community or the other. It really does involve really needing to rethink about what that means for that community. So.
Yeah. And again, we talked about the narrative earlier, completely unrelated, the narrative that we use, something that the community, and I said this in pretty much every meeting, the community must understand when they see presentations like this happening, that this is a done deal process, or this is, I want to thank you all because you are proactively preparing for something that is beyond our control under a potential state law. And that the way that this law, or this bill, is being advertised to the community, if you were to go to the State House's website and see the press release about Senate bill passing, they talk about it as if it were something related to curriculum or something that it totally is not. And so I just want to make sure that the community knows, like, this is not something that, like, this is a good thing that you all are preparing for this potential reality. And it's not an easy task to do. And I do see that you all are putting what the community needs first in that process. So it's not an easy task that you all are doing, and I do appreciate that. And it is scary for the city to think about that. And they have to know, like, this, if this becomes law, we are going to have to do that.
Step it up, too.
So, yeah, everybody pay attention to this, because it's a problem.
Naya, do you have any thoughts on strategies our new slash old lobbyists, the State House Impact Group, will use to either water this down or prevent it from passing? Or how are you thinking about this?
So, wait, I think this is on. I don't know. If not, hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
So I think that the initial conversations around SB 311 was that the bill was moving, but I don't think that it was anticipated that the bill would pass out of the Senate before they went on break. That is what happened. I think some of the places that we are looking to create some flexibility is trying to understand, like, what is required, because I think the bill is fairly unclear in terms of if you have a plan in place for a building, what does that mean in terms of having to sell or lease the building, or do plans count as something that you can utilize to say, okay, they have a plan for this building, so they don't have to sell or lease it at this time. There's also not a timeline anymore, because the timeline that was in the original bill has since passed or will pass, and the bill hasn't passed yet. And so bills have a 90-day window before they become effective. And so I think there will be some changes around there. Dr. Brown and I have discussed heavily how we change how they are viewing capacity. So there is some language in, I believe, Maryland in terms of how they look at capacity. And so we've been talking about how we can kind of advocate for some changes around capacity. There are some exceptions, it's worth noting, for like our CTE schools and a couple of other areas where those areas, those schools would be kind of not included in terms of having to worry about underutilization, but there's still a lot of work to be done there. So I think we are looking at capacity as a place, getting a better understanding around if districts have a plan, how does that impact their ability to hold on to their properties with that plan? And then I think largely just understanding how does this work in operation, because the bill does not necessarily speak to that in clarity. And so I think we will either be looking for the legislature to give some clarity, or we'll be looking at our Department of Education and Workforce to kind of really put some of the meat on the bones that the bill has. So I think there's a lot that's going on there. I think we are still very much in a period of uncertainty, which is both good and bad in the sense that we can continue to advocate to get some clarity on those pieces. But I think, if things stay as they are, I think there's still a good bit of uncertainty about what this actually means for districts in operation.
Yeah, I worry about making changes in advance of this passing and then it not passing. And like, where does that put us? We reacted to this thing that is not good for our district and gave them the win without it. And so I just wrestle with that personally. I don't know if there's a great answer to that, but
Also,
yeah.
Pilgrim Elementary on Taylor, we found out they sold that for $365,000. Our district sold it to a developing company that dealt with, that's going to do something with OSU for $365,000. Pilgrim Elementary.
Okay.
Come on now. The land is worth.
Yeah.
And how'd that happen? How did the board let that happen? Remember?
No,
Martin, I told you over there, they're tearing down Sawyer Towers.
Yeah.
But on Taylor, if you look that up, $365,000.
When did that, was that a while?
When was that?
I'm not familiar.
2014?
Before 2024.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to say 2014.
These are things the public needs to know.
Board Member Sims, you have?
Thank you. I do want to say, regardless of if Senate Bill 311 passes, the Columbus City Schools still has too many schools. The balance between the number of students we have enrolled, the number of students we're projected to have enrolled over the next 10 years, and the number of academic facilities we have will still be imbalanced. And so I am hesitant to just focus on the list of schools that are underutilized. I think there's a lot of important other factors to consider. But I think, Chair Katzenmeier, if we made a reduction in our facilities, if we don't make a reduction in our facilities, we'll still have too many schools. And if we do make a reduction, we'll be closer to having less schools. And I think we have heard from Dr. Brown about the positive impacts to the consolidations, and those are true, Senate Bill 311 not passing. I did want to explain, because I was very curious about the plan and the language around that. And I think it's really important we remember that the plan is really subject to the State Department of Education and Workforce. And the decision makers at that department will be selected by the next governor if this were to be passed and take effect. And so regardless of what, if the law was to be written now, from my understanding, the plan is subject to them. What they think of the plan, if they think it's going to put the district on the right path or not, it's ultimately going to be subject to the decision makers at that department. It's not going to be subject to us. And it didn't really appear as if there was like a rigorous criteria of, ODU has to do this if the plan says this. And then, it seemed a little bit more open-ended. And then I did have a specific question. Dr. Brown, on the slides here, and I want to go back to it here. It says there's 813 seats at the Columbus Downtown High School. And as a former, cosmic scholar myself, Pegasus, I know there's about 800 kids enrolled at COS. And so I looked up their enrollment data from a random week towards the tail end of last school year, and they had 772 kids enrolled. And I looked at the downtown high school, and there's 452 kids enrolled at the downtown high school. So, altogether, that's 1,200 or so kids. Maybe the downtown high school kids, maybe they're not there all day. Maybe, I'm not sure exactly how the career centers correlate to this data chart. But how is the math going to work out there? How are we going to move 4 grades of COS, and there are roughly 800 students, to a building that has 813 seats and 452 students currently enrolled?
So let me respond to a couple of things you said, and then I'll come back to that. Agreed, the consolidations that we've done to date are using our best facilities in places where the number of students who live in the community has diminished. So we're aligning our facilities to the demand in those areas. Much of the work that's been proposed in consolidation, and if we continue down this road, will follow that same path. You know, you've heard us talk about trying to bring things that are citywide draws to the center of the city, again, making them more accessible. So again, the guiding principles here align to what you said. We've got more seats than we need. We certainly want to serve students in the best educational environments we can. We also are spreading our dollars thinner when we have to spread them across more sites. It also means that we're spreading our staff more thinly. So if we have a site like Eastgate now that is fully being utilized, they're going to have a more stable staffing pattern. They're more likely to have a full-time art teacher, a full-time music teacher, full-time social worker, counselor, et cetera. When we have a larger group of kids, then we have a stable staff and a better learning environment for kids. When I was, and now I'll pivot back to your question, sorry, just had to. We will be moving most of the CTE programming out of downtown high school. So those students won't be served there. Yeah. Downtown high school will be dedicated for a cause. Yeah. This is why we have to phase this over time. There are staffing changes that need to happen to begin to phase the programs to where they need to be, and that has to be done over time.
Right, but that's different than kind of what we originally communicated to the community when when the board agreed to make that transition.
There are two programs that I think we talked about that may remain. One will. The culinary program will remain. The culinary program doesn't house that many students, so this is not going to have a huge footprint on it. But there are many other CTE programs, and I'm not the person to speak to this, that can be relocated to other high schools tied to our academy models to make that programming available to students in other places.
Yeah, and what you said, relocated to other high schools, so then that means, you know, say cosmetology, for example.
Cosmetology is the other one that may stay.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. What's a program that may move? There's a law enforcement.
Yeah, there's a law enforcement, there's
Yeah.
IT, there, you know.
Say the IT, right?
Yeah.
So if the IT is relocating from downtown high school to, say, East High School, then is it IT at East High School, or is it Columbus Downtown High School IT at East High School? Because then I guess my question is, what will be left of the Columbus Downtown High School after this transition? And are we going to keep a school open? I mean, to me, now that because, you know, we have different things in like our bargaining agreements about staffing per school, and then does that mean Columbus Downtown High School is going away?
If we move cause to downtown high school, cause, that will be the location for cause. If we continue to have a culinary program at cause, then there'll be a culinary. Downtown high school, again, the programming is going to move. It has been a CTE location that is a secondary enrollment, not a primary enrollment. We tend not to report a graduation rate for it. We tend not to have a report card for it because it's not a primary school. Kids come there to receive services in a program.
Credentialing.
That credentialing can happen in other places. So that program, it's a program. The program will be moved to other places.
Right, but there's personnel in the building that are assigned to the school? You know, there's a principal, for example, right? I'm sure there's a building secretary. And then are they assigned to Columbus Downtown High School, the school, or are they assigned to the physical building? And what I'm really getting at, and I don't want to pick one particular position, but at what point in this transition that you're describing, as say there's 10 programs and we move the 8 out, at what point do we no longer have a Columbus Downtown High School principal because we no longer have the need for that based on the building? You kind of get.
So I think, I'm getting out over my skis to talk about HR, staffing, et cetera. That's not my bailiwick. But much like when we consolidated, say, broadly to Eastgate, there were staffing positions that were lost in that consolidation.
And it concerns me a little bit to hear that response because, you know, we do this committee work and the board votes and there's an outcome And similar to the transportation CODA work group, it comes back with a new recommendation. And I think to, Board Member Katzenmeyer's point about leaving the community in limbo, one of my biggest frustrations when we have done these closures is we don't always have a plan in place to identify where the kids are going to go. And I think that's something we could talk about changing at the committee and the board level of if we're going to approve additional closures, maybe we'd like more of the plan on the front end, and to be more firmed up. But I think that's just not what we communicated to the community. And so now to have to go back to the community and to let them know that there won't be a Columbus Downtown High School, that's just not, that wasn't communicated when the board made the decision to close. It would be that they would be sharing the space, right? And so I think it makes it really difficult to kind of build that community trust and understanding of how these processes work if we're coming back a couple months later and saying, oh, well, things are tweaked or are a little bit different now. Because it was never, this is the first time to me as a board member that it's being communicated that we won't really have a Columbus Downtown High School. And I'm here on the board, right, at a committee meeting, but there's folks in the community that don't have access to this information, and they're not here tonight, so they don't know that. And so it concerns me a lot, and I think it leaves our community in limbo when we're not clear, honest, and direct about what's going to happen. And if the school's not going to be open anymore in the future, we should come right out and say that when we make a decision to move the kids from one school to another. And then I did have a question regarding the 3 buildings that have already been closed. When will they be demolished? Broadley, Fairwood, and Moeller. We heard from at public comment at our last meeting that the Fairwood site has started to become a bit of a neighborhood nuisance for the community. And, we've heard from the community that they do not want us to leave a blighted, abandoned building in their community, in their neighborhood. They want us to come, knock it down, seed it with grass, and then then we can move forward on what to do with it. But the demolition's already been approved, and so I'm just curious, when will Broadley, Fairwood, and Moeller be demolished?
So through the chair, I don't have a specific date for you for those 3 facilities at this point. We are still looking at those sites. We're looking at them in conjunction of, are there any other alternatives that we could be considering? I think there's some variables that we want to kind of explore a little bit more before we start that process. I don't have the date in front of us. I can't give you the date today.
Is that going to be part of the capital plan that we're seeing in January? Because, every month we don't demolish, this becomes more expensive. It's never going to be cheaper. Well, generally speaking, the costs are going to increase over time.
Yeah, but demo
So,
isn't gonna be that much. Construction will always be more. Demo is.
right, I fully agree with that, but every month, generally speaking, the cost of wages increases every month. The cost of fuel increases every month, generally speaking. And so just to have someone drive out with the equipment will be more expensive in 6 months in some way. And so is it going to happen this fiscal year that these buildings are demolished? Because the board has already, when we approved them to be demolished, we were approving a request to demolish them. And so the intention would be that they would be demolished this fiscal year, or is that something that's going to happen next fiscal year?
I don't want to overcommit without engaging others in this conversation. I do believe that it's important that we understand, again, I mentioned some variables. If we were to consider doing something with that property, maybe even selling it, right? Does it make sense to invest in the demolition of the building? There's just some things that before we go out and do that, because the landscape has changed.
The community's issue is we wait months or years to, Old Wedgwood, for example, that's probably one that's been around much longer than some of our others. But the community's issue was not, you don't know what you're doing with them. The community's issue was, why you don't know what you're doing with them, I'm living with this blighted property in my neighborhood. And we just had a woman come to public comment last week and talk about the nuisance the trash dumpster areas has become, And so now I'm just confused that's very confusing to me, because the community's issue that the board really tried to solve was that they don't want us to leave the property sitting in a blighted state while we're unsure what we're doing with it. And so I'm confused why we're doing that again.
So thank you for the question. I know what we will not do is we had blighted properties for extended periods of time, and we've taken care of quite a few of those. I can guarantee you that will not happen with these properties. It will be significantly sooner than that, but I do want to recognize and I do want to be transparent that I think there are some variables, including our financial situation, that has come into play that we need to just kind of, I don't want to say pause, because that's probably not the right word, but I want to make an informed decision, and I want to make sure that we're utilizing our resources in the best interest of the district and the neighborhoods that we serve.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it budgeted in our capital plan for this fiscal year to demolish these 3 buildings? Because, you said financial issues and the treasurer shook his head no. And so is it in the money we have set aside out of permanent improvement, is it budgeted for these 3 demolishments? Did you write the budget with that in mind for this year?
So the simple answer, Board Member Simmons, is no.
Okay.
So remember our runway for projects. So we entered into consultant contracts for the construction that we'll enter into here shortly with our FY27 funds. So FY27 funds are spoken for in terms of our PI plan right now.
So the choice, if these did get demolished this year, we'd have to defer a project.
I would say that's accurate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But are these properties able to be sold?
Yes,
Okay,
that is an option.
that's an option.
Yeah, also, along those lines, I was going to say, like, pre-K is something that I've been thinking about, right? As we talk about, optimizing our F&P buildings or optimizing our buildings, some of these buildings we have left, I have been thinking about pre-K, right? Because one of the other things to think about is those are community and neighborhood assets, right? Where like people use the fields, people use the playground equipment and everything like that. And so I am curious if we've explored, or as we're talking about this planning, are we thinking about either public-private partnerships or other ways to be able to afford, I know given some of the budget issues, that we could take some of these older, smaller buildings and make them pre-K?
Well, right now we're on the clock to offer these facilities up to the charter schools.
As long as when we're not using them for one of our programming. If we put programming in there, the clock goes away.
It has to utilize a certain percent of even without this utilization formula that they just presented would be new with the occupancy permit, but there is already rules in the state law about how much you have to utilize, but.
I think we should be in a rush to make sure they're not blighted. I mean, if there's dumpsters that are like getting filled up, we should get rid of those.
Right.
We should be mowing the lawn and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm in a rush to demolish these, because once you do that, you can't take that back.
Yep.
So I'm open to like leaving that open. I mean, I hear where you're coming from. I don't know if the building standing is causing the blight or the, people filling up dumpsters next to the building is causing the blight.
The building's only been closed for,
A month, 2
yeah.
months.
No, I understand.
So it's not like it's collecting cobwebs and there's animals
Like
living
Monroe.
inside the building.
Monroe was.
It is important to remember, the reason the board ordered these facilities demolished is because they're not suitable for use as an educational facility. They're not buildings we'd want to put our kids in. We wanted to take our kids out of these buildings because they're dilapidated. But Treasurer Cook, do you happen to know, are we on the clock on these buildings right now for having to offer them up?
It is my understanding that, yes, we would be on the clock when they're no longer utilized for educational use. A lot of the provisions that are in Senate Bill 311 already existed with respect to timelines. I think Dr. Brown talked about some of the other caveats with that. I would say there's a little more enforcement action with those, if that's fair to characterize it as. But yes, when we vacate a building, based on current law, we would be on the clock, I do believe.
I want to throw out a potential answer to these kind of last 2 questions that Dr. Brown has posed here. I think the second question is it the committee's recommendation that the administration bring a timeline for the updates for construction at the committee meeting in September? I think we all agree that, yes, we'd love to see that. That
Yeah.
sounds great. I'm personally am a little more nervous, I guess, about saying yes to the first one. I'm concerned with having that discussion publicly without, in the absence of that FMP update. It feels like that could send out alarm bells to the community. And I wonder if we could say we encourage you to consider working on that, of course, but I don't know if I don't know if I'm there yet to have those kind of specific discussions. And Board Member Simmons, do you have any feeling about that as another board member?
I think for the urgency with, my biggest concern is that some of these provisions will become law, and we will have 90 days to implement them. And that is much quicker than we have, or potentially the start of next school year, but that is much quicker than we have implemented these school closures. We've done, in response to community feedback, slow, deliberate consolidations that have taken time, have had a lot of community engagement, a lot of staff planning have gone into how to do these consolidations. And so my only concern is that we're going to be in a position where we have to scramble because the law has passed in, say, lame duck, which is also a time where we already heard from our Director of Government Affairs that some provisions of the law would have to be rewritten because of the timeline. And so we could find ourselves in a position where this is passed over the holidays in lame duck with different provisions that we weren't anticipating, and then we have not a lot of runway to implement it. And I also think, regardless of whether or not this passes, Columbus City Schools still has too many schools. And there should be some initiative undergoing to facilitate that consolidation, because without an influx of students or revenue, this current facility situation is just not sustainable.
Would you feel comfortable requesting that the administration continues to work on these plans, and as this bill advances, as time advances, we will be ready to, hear them and act on recommendations
Chair Katzmeyer?
as quickly as possible? Go ahead, Dr. Brown.
Just for your consideration.
Yeah.
AFAC's already agreed to have this come back.
What's that?
AFAC, the other committee, has already agreed to have this come back.
Okay.
So this will be a dialogue.
Okay.
Well, the other consideration is the board did make a commitment that we would have a new policy 7105 before we considered new school closures. I believe maybe some of the things on Dr. Brown's list unaddressed by board action maybe were recommended or considered by the task force. I can't remember exactly. He could probably speak better to that. But the other consideration would be, if that's still the board's intention, which is what we told the community we would do, then what is that process going to look like? And is there time before the law takes effect to implement that?
Okay. Could this be something that we reviewed with AFAC in our, so one of the plans going forward, likely in October, I believe, is that we'd have a joint session with the AFAC committee? I mean, is this something maybe that we push to that? The first piece? And I could talk to, we don't have Board Member Adair. Oh, Board Member Adair, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hear me?
Wait, say something again. We heard
I can hear you guys.
Have you been following what we're talking about?
I have.
Okay. Do you think that's something so this would be the committee's recommendation that the administration present additional options to address the underutilization and program placement at the committee meeting in September. Is that something that might make sense in our joint committee, or do you think it's a better idea to hear that separately? Do you have any thoughts there?
I think it does make sense to do it in joint committee because of this exact conversation. It touches on the academic and the facility alignment, and I think that we have to have them in conjunction because just in listening, there's a big component of the academic program to some of the points that Brandon made that is really important that we consider about why we're moving forward. And then we have to look at the facilities. So I do think it's important to have this as a joint conversation, as well as the policy. So that's in the AFAC committee as well. And so we know we need to address that policy before we can make any other recommendations for closure.
Okay, great. So, so then the answer to your questions, Dr. Brown, I think I'm seeing some nods all around, would be that first question. We'll address it in the next joint committee.
That makes a ton of sense to me.
Okay.
And that way I'm presenting it once.
Yes, that's also a great reason.
Really fast today.
Okay, yeah. Okay, great. And then the second one, we'll hear that here in our next committee. Okay. Love it. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to make one more suggestion too.
Yeah.
Bring the wins when you come, right? I think like one thing I was thinking about last year when I was sitting in this committee was that we don't have uniform latchkey across the district. So if in some of these school changes and moves that we've made, if latchkey is being offered, that's a huge win, right? Bring the win show us some of the numbers about number of students that we can serve that we're not busing across the district, because I think that's a huge win. Consistently I hear from parents, no one wants to put their kid in a bus at 5:45 in the morning just because they need a slightly different academic program, right? So I think if you can bring the wins as well, that also helps when we're talking to the community to show them like, we're not making this up. This is real about some of the wins that we can get when we talk about this.
Love the wins. Okay. Okay, great. We're we're running late. Let's knock out 4.3.
Thank you. I think we can talk a little bit faster than Russ did. Right. That was impressive.
I thought I was pretty quick there for a minute.
We held him
I don't
up.
think it's you talking, it's us asking a question.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for staying late with us.
Thank you for allowing us to come before you to talk about local economically disadvantaged enterprises. This is, as you see at the top of this document, this presentation does not go to the board until September, but we did want to present it to the ETRM in the only opportunity that we had. So it's still work in progress. The numbers won't change that much, but we're still cleansing some of the data, so there might be some minor tweaks. We just wanted to call that out. I have joining me today Mr. Tony Anthony DiGirolamo, Director of Purchasing, and Dwayne Parks, our Outreach Coordinator. And I would just like to acknowledge these individuals. They do a tremendous amount of work, very small shops. Our LEDE shop is a one-man show, and our purchasing department is a five-person department serving a huge system. So these gentlemen do a lot of work with a little resources.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
On this particular slide, Policy 6400 drives our work, and it contributes to the development of strong communities. I talked a little bit earlier about the regional dynamics that are going on, and we need to bring our local and small vendors along in some of those growth and some of that opportunities. Our vendor engagement is informed by race and gender neutral policies. That's important to recognize. And we have no set-aside programs specific to any race or gender. It is illegal to discriminate based on race and gender in vendor practices for the state and local government contracts in Ohio. We are entering our second year with a dedicated outreach coordinator leading this effort, and When we get into the data, you will see that our fiscal year 26 spend was approximately $35.6 million. It's a little bit down from last year, but it is our third highest spend in over the last 14 years. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DiGirolamo to talk a little bit about the data, and then we'll close with Mr. Parks talking about the outreach program.
Yep, thank you, Maurice. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk through a few data slides here. The district had $229 million in controllable spend. We identify controllable spend. We pull out things like payroll and benefits and utilities, non-public school purchases that are not controllable. Of that $229 million, the district spent roughly $35.6 million with LEDE vendors in FY26. This was the third highest LEDE dollar spend in at least the last 14 years. The district spent 15.5% of controllable spend with LEDE vendors. That was the second highest in the last 6 years, trailing only last year. Next slide. This slide's a year-over-year comparison versus FY25. In FY26, the district spent $81.6 million with businesses in Franklin County. This was an increase of $10 million in Franklin County spend compared to the previous year. And so what this includes is all of our LEDE spend, but also spend with vendors that have a Franklin County business address that are not registered in our LEDE program. So while Franklin County spend was up, our total LED spend was $35.6 million versus $41.5 million in FY25. Our prime LEDE spend, which is directly in our ERP system and is systematically tracked in our ERP system, that was $25.2 million, which was 11% of controllable spend, roughly flat year over year. That was also the third highest prime LEDE spend in at least the last 14 years. While Board Policy 6400 states that LEDE goals will be achieved through race and gender neutral measures, we do track LEDE spend by LEDE classification. However, no business decisions are based on these categories, and there are no set-aside programs utilized by the district. Also, it's important to note that Tyler Munis, our ERP system, only allows for one classification selection per vendor, and vendors self-identified during the registration process. But through our competitive procurement process, the district spent $19.6 million with African American LEDE vendors. This was 55% of the total LEDE spend with the district. It was the highest spend with African American vendors in at least 15 years, and our fifth straight year of growth with African American vendors. The district spent $12.9 million with Caucasian LED vendors. This accounted for 36% of total LED spend, was down 42% versus FY25. The district spent $675,000 with Hispanic LED vendors. This was 2% of our total LED spend and was down 60% versus FY25. This final slide just shows some departments that are outperforming the aspirational goal of the board. Multiple departments surpassed that goal, including safety and security and student support, family engagement, which reached over 50% LEDE spend in FY26. In total, operations spent just under $28 million with LED vendors, so they account for 81% of the district's LED spend. Of that $28 million, capital improvements spent about $20 million with LED vendors, and had a percentage of $26.5 million for roughly 58% of the district's total LED spend. That concludes the data portion. I'll now pass it to Dwayne Parks to provide some updates on the actual LED program.
All right. Good evening, board and committee members. So last year, we introduced our outreach services strategy. This year, our focus has been putting that strategy into action by increasing awareness, engagement, and access to Columbus City School procurement opportunities. A major part of that work has been building connections. We've expanded our outreach with vendors throughout the community, strengthened relationships with business and community organizations, and created more opportunities for business to connect directly with CCS departments and decision makers. Just as important, we continue to help businesses better understand how to navigate CCS procurement and position themselves for opportunities. So the key takeaway from this slide is that we're expanding access and strengthening the connection between CCS and the local business community. Building a sustainable supplier ecosystem. That's what really these two slides represents. Our approach is to move businesses from awareness and education to engagement, participation, and ultimately economic opportunity. This year, we continue strengthening community partnerships and vendor support, engaged the outreach committee, moved our LED certification application online. We're also continuing the implementation of the B2G Now system for contract compliance. It remains a work in progress, but it's still on schedule. As we move forward, it will support stronger tracking, reporting, and overall program management. The larger point is that success is not measured by spend alone. We're building the relationships, the processes, and the infrastructure necessary to develop a stronger and more sustainable pipeline of qualified local businesses prepared to compete for CCS projects. The strategy we presented last year is moving forward, and we will continue building on that work in fiscal year 27. Turn it over to you, Maurice.
That concludes the presentation. We'll take any questions or feedback or comments from the committee.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions, comments from the committee?
Thank you for this work. It's seems like it's been very effective, and
Yeah.
appreciate the information.
Yeah, I love it. One thing that did come to mind, though, was with the CTE programs. I'm wondering if there's some synergy there, where as we already are outreaching and working with smaller businesses, if that's a place that our graduates could potentially also land for one of their first jobs. So that's probably my only question/comment. But otherwise, great. Thank you.
So one of the things we are doing is, generally, most of the work has been on the operational side of CCS. So one of the things we did this year is hold an outreach session on the academic services side. So I'm continually growing those relationships on that side of the business. And so I think a lot more things will come out, especially since we had a pretty successful event, and I think more people are engaged in that side of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I say business because we're dealing with business. So
Yeah.
we will continue to grow that part of the business.
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I just really wanted to give you guys kudos on the LADE event that I attended. I really thought the engagement with everybody here at the district, along with the vendors, was fantastic. So thanks, and I can see it's making a difference.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So before we adjourn, just want to thank everyone. I love hearing all the different viewpoints and questions, and I just feel like we kind of do a great job of breaking this down in an open environment. So thank you all. Thank you to the presenters, staff, and the committee members. Really appreciate you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Any objections? If none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.